Picture this. A shiny, freshly built passenger jet rolls out of a Chinese hangar. It's the C919, China's answer to the Boeing 737 and the Airbus A320. Sleek, modern, and powered by some of the most advanced components on the planet. The engines? Co-developed by General Electric and Safran of France. Avionics from Honeywell. Landing gear systems from Collins Aerospace. Even the tires come from Michelin. Every major system is built by companies already trusted by American and European regulators. And yet, the plane still can't fly internationally. Not because it's unsafe, not because it failed inspections, but because Europe's aviation regulator, EASA, recently announced it won't grant certification for another 3 to 6 years. A huge setback for a jet designed specifically to satisfy global standards. Cue the headlines. A few U.S. media outlets mocked the aircraft. What's the point? No one wants it anyway. But that's not the real story. What's unfolding here isn't really about checklists or paperwork. It's about leverage, influence, and a high-stakes struggle over who gets to shape the future of the skies. And China's reaction is not what anyone predicted. Why certification matters. Let's pause and answer a simple question. Why is certification such a big deal in aviation? Think of a type certificate as a plane's passport. It's a formal document from a country's aviation authority declaring, yes, this aircraft is safe to fly. Without that approval, the plane can't operate commercial routes outside its home country. No certificate, no international flights, no exports. Basically, no business. And here's where things get tricky. In global aviation, two regulators dominate everything: the FAA in the United States and EASA in the European Union. These two agencies are so influential that most countries simply follow whatever they decide. If a plane is approved by the FAA or EASA, it's automatically accepted in dozens of nations, from Brazil to Japan. China understood this perfectly. That's why, in 2019, Beijing signed a bilateral aviation safety agreement with the EU. The purpose: lay the groundwork for mutual recognition. If the C919 met EASA's standards, it should, in theory, be certified. China even went further. They designed the C919 around internationally trusted Western components to make sure it satisfied every requirement. The plan seemed solid: build to global standards, use proven parts, follow the rules, earn the approval. So the obvious question is, why isn't that working? The C919. Now let's look more closely at the C919 itself, because this is not some homemade project thrown together in a workshop. This is a commercial jet built to global standards from day one. Start with the engines. The C919 uses LEAP 1C engines developed by GE and Safran, the exact same family powering the Airbus A320neo, one of the world's best-selling aircraft. These engines are already certified by both the FAA and EASA. And it doesn't end there. Flight control systems? Honeywell. Radar? Rockwell Collins. Fuel systems? Parker Hannifin. Tires? Michelin. Every one of these companies has decades of experience supplying Boeing and Airbus. So here's the paradox. If every major component is already certified, why isn't the entire plane certified? It's like assembling a smartphone entirely out of certified parts, a Qualcomm chip, Samsung display, Sony camera, and being told the final phone still needs years of extra checks before it can be sold abroad. Not because it's unsafe, but because it wasn't made by Apple or Samsung. That's the frustration. Comac didn't cut corners. They didn't reinvent the wheel. They followed the rulebook and are still being told to wait possibly another 6 years. And at some point, it stops looking like quality control and starts looking like a roadblock. So what's actually happening here? On paper, EASA says the delay is technical. They argue that every aircraft, regardless of where its parts come from, must be evaluated as a complete system. And yes, that makes sense up to a point. But let's zoom out. Because this isn't the first time China has followed international rules only to see those rules quietly move. Take space cooperation. In 2014, China and the EU agreed to collaborate on deep space missions. European astronauts visited China, trained at Chinese facilities, even learned Mandarin in preparation for joint missions on China's space station. Then suddenly, in 2023, the European Space Agency backed out, citing vague political and financial reasons. Years of preparation vanished. Or look back to the early 2000s when China joined the EU's Galileo satellite navigation program. China invested heavily, followed the technical roadmap, but under pressure, mostly from the US, China was pushed out. The result? China built its own system, Beidou, which now rivals GPS. Ironically, Galileo still isn't fully operational. This is the pattern. China joins the game, plays by the rules, and then the rules change. Whether it's satellites, space stations, or now commercial aviation, the message is the same. When China becomes competitive, the competition gets redefined. And here's why this matters. The global aviation market is basically a duopoly. Boeing and Airbus control around 90%. Now along comes Comac, with the backing of the world's second-largest economy, and a plane that meets all the technical requirements. For the first time in decades, that duopoly feels pressure. In that context, the delay to certify the C919 doesn't feel neutral anymore. It starts to look like protectionism disguised as procedure. Let's flip the script for a moment. Western critics love to ask, who's even going to buy the C919? But here's the truth. Even without international certification, the C919 already has a massive market. Start here. China is on track to become the world's largest aviation market by 2042, according to the International Air Transport Association. We're talking about projected demand for over 9,000 new aircraft, nearly a quarter of global demand. Comac only needs a fraction of that to thrive. So even if the C919 never leaves Chinese airspace, it still has a future. But that's not the end of the story. Countries across Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam have already shown interest. Many of these nations are part of the Belt and Road Initiative and are open to recognizing Chinese aviation standards instead of waiting for Western approval. Meanwhile, let's talk about Airbus, the supposed winner of this delay. China is Airbus's biggest national customer. Since 2006, China has bought more planes from Airbus than from Boeing. There are over 2,200 Airbus jets flying in China right now, more than half of China's aviation fleet. Airbus even builds planes in China. Its Tianjin assembly line produces up to 6 aircraft a month. So let's be clear. If market access becomes a two-way street, Airbus stands to lose just as much, if not more, than Comac. The claim that nobody wants the C919 is not just wrong, it ignores the actual math. And that math favors China. China isn't sitting around waiting for a stamp of approval. It's already adapting. First, engine independence. Right now, the C919 uses LEAP-1C engines from GE and Safran. But Comac is working with AECC, the Aero Engine Corporation of China, to develop a homegrown alternative, the CJ1000A. If successful, that switch would be a game changer. It would remove a critical Western dependency and break the certification chain that runs through US and European suppliers. But that's not the only front. Comac and Chinese regulators are also building a parallel aviation ecosystem through diplomacy and partnerships. Several Belt and Road countries have signed mutual recognition agreements, meaning Chinese certified aircraft could legally operate there without needing FAA or EASA approval. Then there's China's market leverage. It doesn't need to issue bans or threats. It can simply shift purchases. Imagine Chinese state-owned airlines gradually favoring Comac for domestic routes or postponing big Airbus orders unless certification timelines line up. No dramatic headlines, just quiet economic pressure. It's a steady, strategic response, not out of revenge, but because if the global system shuts you out, you build an alternative. That's exactly what China is doing. The C919 is more than just a passenger plane. It's a symbol of ambition, resilience, and long-term strategy. Think about Huawei. When cut off from US chips, it didn't collapse. It doubled down and built domestic innovation, eventually launching 5G phones with Chinese-made processors. Or Beidou, China's answer to GPS, created after being pushed out of Europe's Galileo project. These weren't just technological wins, they were declarations. The C919 is following the same path. At first, China tried to integrate, to follow the global aviation system, to use Western components, to respect certification protocols, to sign agreements. But when the goals shifted, China didn't yell or retaliate. It pivoted. Now it's rebuilding aviation from the inside out: engines, electronics, certification structures, and export markets. The irony? ESA's delay may actually accelerate China's transformation. By holding the C919 back, regulators may have pushed China to build something even more independent and eventually more competitive. This isn't just about one plane. It's about the world changing. The next chapter of aviation won't be shaped only in Seattle and Toulouse. Shanghai, Tianjin, and Chengdu are joining the runway. So if you're thinking, it's just one aircraft, think again. The C919 is only the beginning, and the skies are about to get a lot more crowded. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe for more deep dives into tech, strategy, and global stories that mainstream headlines skip. The future is unfolding, and we'll be here to explain it. See you in the next one.